Two things that I kind of dislike. People staring at me. You are all looking at me, but you all look beautiful, but it's a little bit nerve-wracking. And then I have a super raspy voice in general, and now I'm talking on a mic, so it's a little bit weird. I love Guilford. I consider it a home for me. I was very, very much engaged. I was here at Guilford. Every time I talked about Guilford, I would cry. My friends thought that was really weird. And I love Carrie so much. Oh, I love everyone here. And I love the way that Guilford continues to keep in contact with its alumni. So there are people that email me and just ask, how are you doing, and don't want anything from me. And that's something I really appreciate. And I'm happy to be back. In preparing for this talk, I was going to talk about something else. And then Tupac Shakur died on September 13th. And he's always been someone that I look up to. If you know me, the obsession is real. And it goes beyond him being a beautiful man, but into so many other things, and hence my shirt today. I was like, semi-professional or Tupac, which one I went with. And so I felt really led and called to talk about him, and it's only 10 minutes. So that's a little bit sad, so I'm hoping that his words will guide you. And I talk a little fast, so if I'm talking really fast, just put your hand up. I saw one of my friends just do that for me. Thank you, you're so great. So raise your hand if you know anything about Tupac Shakur. Oh, this is so beautiful. You're warming my heart. If you know his music, raise your hand. If you know his poems, raise your hand. If you know his activism, raise your hand. That's pretty good. And I ask you many of those questions because what tends to happen is we know about someone based on what other people tell us, and we only see one side of who they are. And so many people saw Tupac Shakur, this rapper, right? And there's an image that is associated with a rapper and this idea of what thug life means, and couldn't hear Tupac's words himself. And so while Tupac was an incredible rap artist, and sometimes he did get into too much trouble, he was also a brilliant man that spoke words that continue to encourage our generation today, not just in music, but the way that they live their lives. And I think I am one of those people. Maybe he's here with us right now. And I'm one of those people that I think his words has really moved. And I don't know when this obsession or this love began, but I know that it's something that will continue. And this goes into organizing as well. We're not perfect beings as organizers, and not just in social justice, but our jobs as teachers, our jobs as doctors, and the work that we do as fellow humans is never perfect. And I think it's important for us to admit a lot of those faults so that we can continue to be engaged as organizers and as humans with each other. And so, roll with me here for a moment. So I'm going to speak about an experience that I had in grad school. A lot of the work that I do is around community organizing with race relations. And I'm led to that place because of my identity as a Black American woman, but also a Caribbean American woman. And so that's been really important for me. So there is this group called Coming to the Table. It also has a national chapter. It brings together the descendants of slaves and slave owners. And so I joined this group because I had a Haitian American friend that thought it would be a great opportunity for me. And I was like, no, I'm tired of teaching people how to be in a space with me and educating myself about my own history at the same time. But he's a really great friend, so I was like, okay, I like you, we can go. And he just graduated out of the master's program, great young man. And so I went to this meeting, and I remember being in this circle and feeling so uncomfortable. It wasn't intergenerational, it wasn't intercultural, and to be quite honest, I thought it was whack and boring. I don't think so anymore. I served as a youth leader for about a year and a half now for this particular chapter of Coming to the Table. But I remember someone crying, and I couldn't feel anything for her. And so how could I, as a community organizer, be in this space with people that were sharing real emotions, and I couldn't feel anything for them? I continued to not feel anything for them. And I remember my first year of grad school was really hard because I didn't think enough organizing was happening in the community. And I hope I don't cry during this presentation because it will be recorded, and I'm an ugly crier. It's really, really bad. Ask all my friends. And so I remember hearing about Mike Brown, the women, the black men, the trans women and men that were getting killed at the hands of the system. And there was no one for me to talk to. We often open a lot of my classes in a circle, and I would always use that space as a format of disruption to bring those stories in. But what about my story? What about what I was feeling and experiencing, right? And so what I began to realize was that I didn't trust those people I was engaging with. I didn't trust myself, and I didn't trust them. And in order to be an organizer, one of the first things that you have to do is break down that wall so you can trust people. And one of the greatest things that I think Tupac said was thinking about how he would spark the mind to change the world. He wasn't worrying about himself being famous. That's not why he did it. But he had something on his heart, and he was called to speak, and that's what he was doing. And so one of the things that I learned, and I think I was kind of learning this at Guilford, I did too many clubs for me to list for you right now, and too many scholarship programs, and was also an athlete and a resident advisor. That organizing is a team sport. It is not about me. If the organizer is at the center of the movement, it will not get done because life happens. So what happens in a moment where I'm feeling like my black body is suffocating and a team is depending on me? What happens to them, right? We all fall apart. And I think that's happened with many movements, and it's understandable. On one hand, we live in a world that is beautiful, but on the other hand, it is sometimes hard to navigate through this world. And so making organizing a team sport, and one way I did that was write a letter to this organization, and I said, I love you all, but I have been hurting in these circles, and I've been suffocating, and it's time for me to speak. And they listened to that. And so now we're creating new initiatives. How do we get young people engaged in the community? How do we get more black and brown youth engaged in the community? We have a large refugee and immigrant community, particularly in Harrisonburg, Virginia, where I'm located. What about their voices and their stories? And I think that group was open to listening. And because I wasn't making organizing a team sport and thinking somehow I could be in this circle, not trust them, and racial reconciliation could still happen. And at the end of the day, that's like not realistic in any sense possible. I have to talk to them, like if that's the group I'm navigating through. And so that leads me to something else. Be honest and self-care. Jada Drew is here right now, and I remember one of the first things when I came into Guilford, Jada was telling me, is to learn how to say no. And I had a really hard time with saying no, and sometimes I still do, and sometimes I lie about it, but that's okay. And so I remember my junior year here at Guilford, I was walking to the multicultural education department where I was always trying to go no matter what in between classes, and I started crying in the hallway. And typically, I'm a crier, but I don't like crying in front of others, and so only my close group of friends see me cry and do the ugly face. And I remember someone went to get Jorge Zavallos. Jada wasn't there because it would have been everyone in the department if she was. And then Jorge took me into his office, and he was asking questions so that I could understand why I was crying. He didn't want to tell me the reason I was crying. He wanted me to discover that for myself. I was committed to too many things. Within that year, I lost about 3 different people to cancer, and I couldn't go back home. And there were other things happening at home. But I was also president of 3 organizations, a student athlete, and I needed to graduate, and make it to the next year. And so I ended up stepping down from my position as president of 2 organizations. And I remember Jorge saying, I will come to every meeting and make sure you don't talk. And I was like, that's embarrassing, so I think I really have to make this commitment. But I had to start caring for myself more. I needed to be whole for the movement. And that's within all of us. We need to be whole to take care of our children, to take care of our parents, to take care of our fellow human beings. And so I had to start being honest with myself. We have to be real with each other in order to heal each other. A lot of us need healing. Whether you're black, brown, queer, whatever it is, there's some kind of healing that we need. And this takes me to another point. You're already the rose. Give yourself credit. I was not giving myself credit for all the things I've done. When I graduated from Guilford, not to hype myself up in any way, I promise, I did the commencement speech, and it was dedicated to my mom. And I knew she was really proud, but I wasn't proud of myself. I felt like I didn't do anything. I was like, I could have worked harder in that class. Maybe I could have done a study that was quantitative instead of qualitative, because it would have pushed me as a researcher. And I was questioning a lot of things. And when I went to grad school, one thing I will tell you, for current students of Guilford, and I think a lot of the alumni already said this, Guilford really prepares you in an incredible way. And when I say that, I'm not saying that because it sounds good, but it really does. I was in a master's program, and I remember some of the questions people were asking, and I would get frustrated, and I would be like, you gotta remember, girl, you're from Guilford, stop it. And so I was really prepared in so many ways. I was like, this paper is so easy, watch me get this A. Or just thinking about some of the critical ways of thinking and engaging with people in dialogue that Guilford taught me. And And so I left from the Quakers to go to the Mennonites, but I still brought the knowledge with me, you know. And so I really appreciated so much of that. And so the way that people continue to affirm me or affirmed me before, I think that I can take that with myself. And one thing I will say about this poem, The Rose That Grew from the Concrete, I think people have this assumption that Tupac was saying that there was a chance the rose was going to die. And I don't think that's what he was ever saying. I think he was saying that the rose was bound to live through the concrete no matter what. And so in our lives, what we need to do is scrape that dog poop to the side. Those pedestrians need to go. And we need to allow these roses to continue blooming. Because in reality, we're all roses in a field. And it will grow through the concrete. It will grow through the cracks, the sewage. It will continue to grow no matter what. I really like flowers. I'm finished, but I'm going to say this one last thing. Beside roses, there's a Borellus perennis, which is, and I could be pronouncing that wrong because I have bad pronunciation in general, but that is a type of daisy, and it means pretty everlasting. And so no matter if it dies, it still remains beautiful, and that's always been incredible. And I think that applies to a rose as well. The same way it grows through concrete, it grows no matter where it is, and we will continue to be growing because we're destined to do that. I'm called to do this work. I'm called to talk about Tupac every single day, publish books and articles about him. No matter who's listening, I can just reread my work and think it's great, right? That's what we do as writers. And so thank you so much for giving me the honor of being able to talk to Tupac, well, talk to and about Tupac with you. That makes sense? That was a nice rhyme. So thank you so much. Yeah.